Hello, hello. Welcome to this edition of the Law Firm Blueprint. I'm one of your hosts, Jay Ruane, and with me, as always, my man Seth Price down there in the BluShark Price Benowitz headquarters. You know, it's funny. I see you, and it's clearly a backdrop, just like mine is a backdrop. It looks nothing like where BluShark started from.
Yeah.
Because I can remember being downstairs in that building of yours in DC. There were no windows with beautiful, clear light coming in. It was like a cave.
And
A
we
free.
literally just as of January 1st gave up the cave, the dungeon, as some would call it. And now we
Yeah,
are all above grade. Probably not the smartest thing we ever did getting it, but back in the day when we had marketing people and intake people, we just needed cheap space in a city. It was really important. But ironically, a Jay Ruane BluShark tie-in. Congratulations on the
oh yeah,
Jay Ruane website being named as a top lawyerist website for lawyers. Pretty
yeah,
cool.
yeah. It is cool. You know, we got one a couple of years ago for our Lady DUI site. We've got it for this year. We're actually right now in the wireframe stages of building out the next look. We got some pretty cool stuff coming. It may not, it probably won't help SEO, which I know matters to you, but I think,
Well, it matter. I
you know,
mean, it matters
the
to
look and
me.
feel of what we're gonna do on the next site, especially with the bio pages, I think is gonna be sharp. It's gonna be different. And I'm really excited to see how that plays out. Because, you know, I think, you know, and we can talk about that, I see a lot of questions in forums online, in Facebook groups, and that type of thing. They're like, "What should I do for my website?" And you see a lot of people saying, "I'll just put up a Squarespace site. It doesn't matter. Just have a digital business card. It doesn't matter." But in my experience, the better looking your website, the with professional looking pictures. I invested years ago in getting a wedding photographer to take really, someone who could tell a story through pictures. Um, you know, I know there's this battle between design and technical that often people run into, but the better looking your site, people expect to pay more, and you can easily quote more. I mean,
Well,
what are your thoughts?
okay, so we'll do the yin yang.
Uh-huh.
So I don't disagree. Like I think you can. The spoiler is you can have your cake and eat it too, right? You shouldn't have to sacrifice one for the other. Can you not have like a blank page with a little white dot in the middle of it? Yeah, there's certain things you can't go to the extreme on. But the truth is, I think that as you're saying, photos make a big difference. I'll tell you a story. When I first started the firm, I had a $25 a month templated website. Seemed like a lot of money at the time. I don't know if I could afford 25 bucks, right? So it was 25 bucks a month. And I kept adding features to it where like, I don't know, it was chat or this feature or that feature. By the time I was finished, I was paying $500 a month. And the guy eventually fired me because I sort of maxed out his program. He's like, it's time for you to fly and build your own thing. I can't do any more for you. But I remember a friend of mine who runs a design company that helps people find designers permanent and temp. And that's all he does is web designers, full-time and temp, not in the legal space. And I said, I was so proud of my site because I had grown from 3 to 5 lawyers with this rinky-dink criminal law DC site. And I showed it to him and he's like, yeah, it's nice-ish, not really. And I was like really hurt. And in hindsight, it was a red templated 3-column site, but it made money and I was thrilled. And what he's taught me, and I've tried to take in, is that you can have both, that it's not an either or. But to say with limited resources that design is the first place to go and spend
Oh,
40,000. I
yeah.
know you're not saying that. But I'm saying is as somebody's making decisions, to me, you need to have revenue. Once you have revenue and you want to say, hey, I want to posture for a higher place, okay. But design is one of those things that as soon as you finish one, and you just had an award-winning one, and you're like, yeah, I'm ready for the next one. Like
Right.
it is not something where if you let it sit for too long, it will be dated, and that you're constantly trying to update it. That said, you hate the term, but it depends on what your area is. And are people even coming to your site? There are people that are just word of mouth. Nobody's going to their site. And there are people where the site is everything and knowing where you are in that continuum.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I get I have a type of practice area that people don't necessarily want to talk about. So there are a lot of Google searches, or just general searches, even if you're using DuckDuckGo or whatever. And our first impression with that website needs to be powerful. It needs to be, expensive, and that's really helped us convert clients at a higher rate. And so it's something that people need to be aware of. That I think with Target and Apple, there's a clear difference between an Android phone and an Apple phone in how it looks and feels. And
You better be careful. I'm a Pixel guy,
I know,
so
I know you are, but like, look, I mean, I don't think I don't think I'm speaking out of turn. Google products look like engineers develop them, and Apple products look like graphic designers develop them. And the ease of use, I think, is important, but I think people are expecting at price points that lawyers charge. I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, how many lawyers do you know that still have an at Gmail or at AOL email address? And you think, I'm going to give you a 10,000 or 20,000 or $100,000 to work on a deal, and I'm sending an email to your at AOL email address
well,
or
look,
at
I'm biased. I see people pitching with a Hotmail or a Yahoo address, and I basically am like, guys, spend the $15. Even I don't know, man, I'm biased, but I think even a Gmail address shows a modicum more sophistication than somebody walking around with a Hotmail. You're proud that you're like the first person who ever got a thing, but never upgraded.
Yeah, I mean, I really think, if you are a lawyer and I mean, I'm sure there are people. I'm going to say it for the first time, I think, in the history of this podcast. I guess it depends, right, on your clientele. But I'll tell you right now, I
Well,
wouldn't
it,
hire
does-
a
it, no, it
lawyer.
doesn't
I
depend.
wouldn't do
You
it.
are you are better off. And look, it's on G Suite. It's still a Gmail address,
Right.
but at least pay the $20 or whatever it is. There are very few things I'd say spend your money on from moment one. The website design, right? Going from good to amazing takes a lot,
Right.
right? You could go on Squarespace and make a perfectly nice photo place with the right photos, right? You don't need to spend a ton. That said, you can't hide from an email address. And to me, that is something that is, I remember thinking when we very first started, before you even had an office, do we need a prestigious office for people to come to? Today, that's not as much of a thing at all, but it's still a thing. And to me, not spending to get a firm email, I would say flat out that's a non-starter. There's no depends. So I mean, you didn't use your depends. Bottom
I'm going to have
line,
one. It depends that I'll use all year,
yeah,
but
no,
that
there's
doesn't
no because
qualify.
you're trying to be nice, but I'm not. I'm going to say no. If we talk about being capitalized to start a firm, if you don't have enough to get a branded law firm URL, that's like showing people that you're not ready for prime time.
Well, and I think, one of the things that's great about the Google environment is that in addition to having that email address, you can then sign up for a Google Voice number that becomes your office number. So
All
it's not
sorts,
just,
all
so
sorts of
I mean, there's a
stuff.
lot of options that you can use right within
But
that.
I'll go with cell phone as office number before I go for before I will allow somebody to use a non-firm email because it is positioning yourself as really at the rudimentary.
Yeah, I mean, I had an accountant pitch me, and he was at Gmail, and I said, "Yeah, I'm not doing business with you." And he's like, "Well, can I ask you why?" And I said, "You have a Gmail at Gmail email account." I said, I just don't find that professional." And he was blown away by that very harsh feedback. And I got a message like, a week later. Hey, here's my new email address in case you need to get in touch with me.
Okay,
Because I
well,
think he went home and said, should I be using Gmail? And he probably asked a couple of people, and they're like, no, get your domain name at, and
right.
I mean but see, that's one of the things that I want to talk about today is the impression on the end user, I think, is critical, right? And it's about our branding, it's about our logo, it's about the services that we deliver and how we deliver them. I can remember, when I first started out 20 years ago, having the presentation folder that we would give to the
Yep.
in-office consults with the stacked papers and here's bios and all that stuff. That stuff really mattered back then.
We spent a fortune on those beautiful blue folders to match the price better. It's blue, and there's a typo on it. And
Oh
so
my,
we had boxes and boxes of beautiful, thick folders. My kids use them for school projects for like years and years because they, of course, did a whole new print job for us. But it was one of those life moments where I remember that growing up, that was stationery was a big deal for my dad. I would get the when a partner left or an associate left, we'd get all the old stationery. It was thick bond paper that we could. And now that's one of the few things we save money on. I remember when I started a firm, we never had letterhead. It's all digital, and that was one of those few things that with technology we saved a lot on. No more stationery.
Well, so that leads me to a question that I think we should be talking about is where as a law firm owner you can allow your people to do things that may not necessarily fit with your sensibilities. And so let me talk about a little, let me explain this a little bit more there. As the owner, if I'm negotiating my lease, I'm negotiating. I know the price points I want to be at. I know what services I want and that type of thing. Same with marketing vendors, same with when I was more active in my caseload, I would say to other lawyers that were working on files with me, hey, here's your authority, right? You can go in this range. And unfortunately, a lot of times they would come back to me and they would have accepted the lowest end of the range. It got them within the range. And so
No,
that was,
no, 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 but that's one of Seth's truisms. I hate to talk like Bo Jackson about like myself, but I know that if I give even an amazing direct report, as good as you're ever going to get, if I give them authority to go to a number, it ends at that number.
right.
It is rare that like we get. I'll give you an example: an unhappy client. They're asking, paid 5,000. We're like, hey, we'll refund somewhere between 2,500 and zero. What can try to keep it as low. The moment I tell that person it's 2,500, it settles at 2,500. It just sucks. And know that. So look, it took me a lot of once you understand that concept, saying, hey, I want to end at 2,500. I'll give them authority to give away $1,500. And if they say they have problems, we can flex. But the moment you give that initial number, it's going there because the person's done their job within their confines. It's human nature. I don't know how. I wish I knew a way that I could give somebody blinders where like here's your number and here's your emergency escape one.
Yeah, I don't know about that because I'm
You
wondering.
open up if the call blows up.
Yeah, I don't know about that because I'm wondering if there's is there a way to give somebody like two numbers and or do maybe in the personal injury, I don't do personal injury, so I'm not gonna presuppose it. You guys have it. Maybe we can get some people who are in that area. Do they say, look, here's your bottom number and your bonuses are based on how far you get away from that
It's usually
bottom
micro
number?
transactions. And I mean, again, maybe it's scale, but I just had a mediation the other day over an issue. And I said, we were on one side and I was trying to say you could give up, 50 grand. And they said, can we go to 60 if we need to? Like, if you need to, where
If
did it
you
end
need,
up?
yeah, see that, and that's part of the conversation is that when you have people working for you, are they going to go to the same ends of the earth that you would go as a firm owner?
And like, forget it, same ends of the earth. That's an extreme. But let's take the average piece. Every piece, we try to put certain rules in place. I try to Jay systematize. I'm not nearly as good as Jay, but do you get 3 vendor quotes for Keurig coffee before you purchase? Right? It can be a 40% difference.
Sure.
There was a point when Bed Bath and Beyond was still in business. I'd send somebody down the street and it was hundreds of dollars in difference. Now you had a person, you had to make sure you had the bandwidth to do it, but it is something that I struggle with a lot, which is I know if I did everything, I'd save a lot of money. I try to now have a more Zen approach, which is if I want to scale, it's not going to be as good as me doing it myself. I get that. Sometimes there's certain things that people do better, but this type of stuff, it is very, very tough. I try to say to somebody, if it was your money, how would you do it? And that usually gets a light bulb to go off in their head. The best employees treat it that way.
Right.
But we had we're doing a build out and we had somebody brought in a bunch of cubes for us to see the difference between two different size cubes. And they left it in our employee common space. Well, tomorrow I'm hosting a big luncheon for the FIDF, and I have all these people coming. I need the space. And they're like, oh, well, if they take the stuff back to their office, they're going to charge us for it. I'm like, no, they're not. We're about to spend tens of thousands of dollars with these people. They did a demo. They can't leave it here. They're not going to leave it here for months till we do it. They take it and they bring it home. Like, and then they'll come back and they'll do it. Otherwise, they're not. So it's that presence of course they are, that the average person's not going to have, that there, which I think comes down to, and we've talked about this in a different place, that when you scale, it's not just the person for person, dollar for dollar increase. It's that you may a mid-level manager at some point to manage people. And then at some point you need like an HRE type person to take care of stuff that before could just be, we'll get rid of it, we'll take care of it. And I think similarly that as you scale, there are certain things. We ordered pizza for an employee event the other day, just pizza, straight pizza, and they spent $600 on pizza. That's a lot of pizza. That's not a, you you that's a fair
Yeah,
pizza for the number of people we had, which is not insignificant. Even good pizza, we A, over ordered to make sure everybody had it, and
right.
B, nobody asked for a deal. They just didn't. And that's the piece, the DNA that, again, I've always complimented you on the fact that you're the first person to pick up a check. I know that you leave money on the table with a lot of things you do, which is awesome. Um, but what drove me, we talked about what drives you. What drove me to get this done would be to make sure we had companies would come in, they're third-party companies that would come in and evaluate your photocopy or your Westlaw bill. And the guys would look at me and look at our bill and be like, yeah, we can't help you. Sorry. Which to me was the greatest compliment. It just made me happy. So, I think it's psychologically, we see people who are sometimes stuck at a smaller number. As we have these conversations, I'm always hoping that people might see, wow, you know what? If I realize that I'm going to pay 20% more for things because it's not me doing it, will I make overall, that's just for those little expenses. You know, if the overall firm revenue is 1 million and you're going to have 20% more of $100,000, is that meaningful? Because if you're willing to give that up, then you've let go and you could get your $1 million to 1,500,000, which you can't without it. And that's, I still struggle with this. I have a radio station relationship and I have a new amazing head of marketing. And the question is, there are things that I know she's amazing at. She'll make sure I get my spots and this and that. But the station is nefarious and not giving us some of the things both they promised us in writing and orally. And that's, they're professionals at it. Like, this is like, these people are, they literally, I'll tell you in a second, one thing to watch out for, but it's causing friction with me and my director because neither of us are getting it. If it's me, I know I've left nothing on the table. Now, I might burn the relationship with the station, which she won't, but I know that if it doesn't happen, it's not going to be for a lack of trying. And that's the struggle that we have.
Yeah, so how do you motivate employees to care? Is there a way, or do you hire somebody and say, like, your job is to be our purchasing manager and make sure that we're squeezing every dollar out of every transaction that we're in and getting our value? I
Well,
mean,
look,
because if you're a $5 million operation and you could save $200,000 a year by being aggressive with your vendors and your purchasing and that type of thing, shit, put somebody in that role for 60 or 75 grand and now you're ahead.
it's easier said than done, and we both know that, right?
Right.
In
Oh no,
that it's not, no,
it's
no. And so what I would say is a couple things. If you go too hard with vendors, they break and you lose them, right? That
true.
happens. If you go too soft, obviously there's a lot of money there. And the question is, can somebody junior even do it? Or is it a life experience? I'm always amazed. My kids are along for the ride. How many times just asking gains great things? And that's where I think that Jay is what the next program I want to see Jay provide for whether it's a standalone product or whether it's part of the whole catalog. But what are the questions you have to ask when doing any sort of business transaction? And it comes down to a late great friend of the family just passed away. He built his own air conditioning business, commercial air conditioning in New York City, about as tough as it gets,
Yeah,
right?
really.
Went from a guy on a truck to having 40 trucks. sad and note of caution, got sick and ended up having the company essentially stolen by a guy he brought in to be his retirement partner, who, when he got sick, so just be careful about who you bring in as a partner, because when the chips are down, he lost a lot. But I learned a ton. And I remember watching him go into Macy's or Bloomingdale's to buy something for his wife. And to me, you go in, you say, hey, I want this piece of perfume. How much is it? No. What can you throw in? Are there any samples? And it was 12 questions, and it was a little cringy. You got to be careful, right? You don't want to become a stereotype, but at the same time, maybe get a four of them, which is any promotions, anything I can bundle that might save some money, and you go through fundamentally, piece by piece, what it can't. My question is, can we somehow add scale, add systems to make it from 20% down to 7? Is there a way? Have I talked to 3 vendors? Have I asked? I mean, again, a lot of it's online, but have I applied any coupons? Are there any on Amazon? Are there recurring orders that save you money? What are the things that we could do so that it's not as much of a delta? There are times you look at something on Amazon, you say, this is cray cray, I got to go somewhere else. And the question is, can we somehow teach, because the people I have doing a lot of the purchasing are administrators trying to get through the day.
Right. They just
And
need to
them, it's a
knock off their
checkbox.
list.
They don't have the art or the skill or realize that decision adds up to something. And it's been very painful. It's again, but it's the personal side. The good news is that every time I've let go and allowed that, we spent $600 on pizza, 500 plus tip, that there's some crazy amount that it's not making or breaking us, and everybody had a great time at the event, but can it be done for less?
So let me ask you, where did Portnoy score the pizzeria that you chose? Was it at least above a 7?
I would this was the place we chose, was like I believe in the low 8s. It was it was a
Okay, so
solid. It wasn't 9 or whatever, but it was this was not a Domino's. It was a real place.
okay, because coming from New Haven, Connecticut, pizza is a very important.
I love New York City, right back at you, right?
Yeah, New York City is like
Oh,
mediocre
stop
New England.
it. You guys put white clams on your pizza. Like, our pizza's so good we don't need to put stuff on it. It's just cheese and tomato sauce with some
I'll
spices.
tell you right now. I'll tell you right now. If you go to Sally's in New Haven, just get a tomato pie. You don't even need cheese, and it'll blow your mind. It's that good. I
Look,
mean,
I am sure it is
Sally's.
great. I grew up spoiled. That was the one thing. You leave New York City, the one thing that's more expensive is good pizza. $1.50 gets you one of the best slices in the world. In DC, to get a decent slice, a good slice, $4 starting point. Cheese
Wow.
slice. Yeah.
God, and to think that it cost them like 11 cents to make that slice
Well,
between the.
it's getting more because they actually have to put some decent ingredients if they want it to be really good. But that said, yes, it is amazing that the single slice widget out of market out of New York is now $4 for a legit. We have a group that's scaling down here called Andy's, and it's a solid pizza. Like, is it? I'm guessing that he put it around an 8, maybe a 7, but it's a solid slice. And the fact that widget is now $4 here is a crime.
Yeah, well, that's just the reality is everybody's paying more for everything, even legal
Well, look, and
services.
that may
You
be
haven't upped
one of
your
the next.
prices.
Let's tee this up for next time, which is with inflation, with the hyperinflation, call it what it is, post COVID. We got salaries, we got expenses. The only good thing we got is rents going down.
That is interesting. I've got 2 more years left on my lease. And now's the time. I'm 3 years into it. I signed it during COVID, specifically because my landlord needed signed leases to be able to refinance with the bank. And so he came to me, asked me to sign a new lease. I did. So now I'm at a point where I should usually start renegotiating for what happens 2 years from now. And I got to make some decisions. So it's interesting. I called up my landlord, and I signed without a problem, right? And so I'm helping out a local pediatric cancer charity with a big fundraiser in October. And one of my first calls was, "Hey Bob, I need you to buy a table. It's $3,500." And he said, "Absolutely, Jay, not a problem. I can always rely." And so that's where I'm using all of that money left on the table, all of that generosity. I'm just
Well,
calling out, trying to get people
right,
to.
but it's more than that. I think that, like, part of what's created the Jay Ruane brand is that piece. And look, there are a lot of different ways to do it, but I've been to lunch with you, and you're like, they're split it. There are times when it could easily go any different way, and and to me, that is a great, um, it always struck me. There have been a few times in life, and I try to be that guy now. It took me more years. It took me to past 50 to figure it out, but I think it makes a lasting impression when you do it in the right situations.
It's funny. I was speaking of picking up tabs. I was in DC. I was at Shula's Steakhouse when I was going to get sworn into the Supreme Court bar. This was probably 20 years ago. I was a young lawyer. I was barely making any money, and I went out to dinner with three lawyers who are now in their 60s, late 60s, probably early 70s for two of them. And so there was five of us out at dinner, and they started laughing and joking, and they say, Jay, as the young guy here, you've got to pick up the tab. So I ate the tab. I mean, I think the tab was like $3,000.
Wow.
And at that point, it nearly maxed out my credit card. I ate it like a champ. I didn't say anything to anybody. I can remember going back into the office the following week and saying to my father, "Hey, I need to make another grand this week. How do I do it? Because I got this credit card bill." And those guys didn't expect me to eat the tab. And I don't think I paid for a drink or a meal with them since. Like they've always been like, I can't believe that you did that, kid. You didn't have to. We weren't doing that for you, to embarrass you. But boy, you really shoved it right up our butts when you gladly picked up the tab and said, "Oh, I got this, no big deal." And so that's part of the way I built my business was, the aura of success, even if it wasn't actual success. That I mean, I had enough money to pay the bill. I may have been eating cereal that week for dinner. But I've eaten some pretty impressive tabs. I think I had an $8,000 tab in Iceland at a club one night, and I had a $12,000 tab in Vegas at Pure one night with a whole bunch of DUI lawyers. We took over a whole section, and that was a lot of fun too. I mean, I had some good nights eating on those tabs. I can't imagine going out drinking with you and some friends, and you
Well, the drinking would keep
reaching
it
for a
moving. We
twelve
would
thousand
not.
dollar tab.
I'm kind of a lightweight, but the food tab could get up there.
That's for sure. That's for
Excellent.
sure.
Let's get it. Let's wrap this up, and then next week let's talk what to do, because I think it's a real deal. The inflation doesn't always allow us to charge more, but our
Right.
expenses are certainly there. And how are we and how are other people dealing with that?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm doing is I'm not taking more money for myself. I'm actually taking more time for myself. I'm telling people, hey, look, you're getting this raise, you got more responsibility in the office, you need to get this done. I'm not going to be here because what I need now is to buy myself more time, not necessarily another couple dollars in savings, because I'm pretty good in that respect. And so that's it. Okay, folks. So that's going to do it for us this week here on the Law Firm Blueprint. Thank you for joining us. As always, you can take us with you on the go by subscribing to our podcast wherever you get podcasts. Just search up the Law Firm Blueprint and give us a 5-star review. When you do that, of course, you can always catch us live in the group, the Law Firm Blueprint Facebook group that's available wherever you get your Facebook. It's on your phone or on your desktop. But for now, I am Jay Ruane. He is Seth Price. And we will see you next week here on the Law Firm Blueprint. Bye for now.